upstate New York, just a stone's throw from the Canadian border. Clayton, New York is coming alive to host the first ever of its kind, an Antique Race Boat Regatta. This special event was co-sponsored by the Antique Boat Museum and Antique Classic Boat Society, which has its headquarters at the museum. The regatta was also sanctioned by the American Powerboat Association. From the earliest racers to the legends, in many cases both the boat and its driver came for this exciting show. Several years in the making, this collection of the world's best antique race boats read like a who's who of boat racing history. There was Tempo 5, once raced by legendary bandleader Guy Lombardo. Boats and motors from yesteryear, and drivers who have made the boating halls of fame, from Bill Tenney to Bud Finkel to Buddy Byers. This particular event took some careful planning, according to organizer John Clark.
And I would like to explain to you exactly how this particular regatta got started. It was right up there on that porch one Sunday morning during the regular boat show that's held here at the museum. Jim Lewis, who everybody knows, and Tony Lewis and some of their friends were sitting up there on that bench, and at the time there was a table in front of it, and they were drinking coffee. And Bob Schroeder and I walked up the stairs and said good morning to Jim Lewis and talked about what a wonderful boat show we had just had. And Jim Lewis folded his arms like he's fond of doing and said it really was another wonderful boat show. He said, but what I propose is that next year, this is several years ago, he said that next year we have the boat show all race boats. And he said, and we'll call it the year of the race boat, which that's been modified over the year to the Antique Race Boat Regatta or whatever we're calling this. And he said, it's going to take a lot of work to convince these people that instead of having a regular boat show, we ought to have a race boat show. It's like anything, you know, if you talk enthusiastically about it to enough people, then they're talking enthusiastically, and then pretty soon, here we are.
I guess I had alter ego, and I knew other people got boats in their garage, and they have nothing to do with them, because in the antique part of it, unless you just wanted to take it there and show it, there was nothing for people to really do with it. And I thought if we actually got a purpose, and now we have a purpose, and there's an awful lot of boats coming out of the garages and the woodwork, and there's some stuff that'll, at the next one of these, it's unbelievable what's been dug out. Buddy's thrilled with his boat. He's going to make another run this afternoon. Buddy got hurt, 20 years ago. I hadn't been in a boat, and I just had him for a ride in the alter ego. And, in fact, that's the first time him and I ever rode together, because I used to race with him all the time, and we rode alongside of each other a lot, but not together.
It's incredible. It's a great event. You have to know where you've been in a sport to know where you're going.
One of the many incredible stories told during the regatta was of this boat, the Chrysler Queen. During her reign in the racing circles, she was driven by Buddy Byers, who during his long career broke his fair share of racing records. It was not until recently that the Chrysler Queen was found in disrepair, and it was not until now that she had been restored to her days of glory. A restoration conducted in part by Chrysler Queen's head mechanic, Bob Cunningham.
It's like going back to my first childhood. I guess this must be the second one then. It's been a lot of fun and quite a bit of work. And the only thing I restored, though, was the drivetrain. The rest of it, the crew in Columbus, club that all these guys belong to, restored the boat. And as Buddy says, they did a fantastic job. They took it to a man's garage, and some of the woodwork was in such bad shape that they start removing the outside shell And finally they got it to, they removed all the shell on the outside, had just a bare frame, and part of it was bad. So they replaced the frame stuff and called the guy to build the boat originally, a Lauterbach from Portsmouth, Virginia, and found out where he got Honduras mahogany for the skin, and they bought it from the same man. And they did a wonderful job when they put it together. Of course, some of the framework had to be replaced also, being outside for so long. Well, I made a lot of phone calls over the United States, and I mean literally over the United States, because it's basically a 57 Chrysler 392 cubic inch, and that was what we were running back in the 60s when Buddy upset it. But to find parts for that engine now, it's quite a chore. Of course, I called everybody that I know all over the country that I used to boat race with. I finally found it, piece here, piece there, and piece someplace else, and we finally got it running. I had a few repairs on the block, but it's ran good today.
Well, you know, we've been married a long time. We're the senior citizens of this group. Bob and I have been married over 48 years, so I feel like I'm the ancient mother of all this troop. I was mother to all the boys that helped Bob. I had all the wallets, all the rings, all the jewelry. Everything was in my purse.
You were the den mother.
I was the den mother. Well, Richard Lindsay, who's standing over there with some of the boys, can tell you they all called me Mom or Mother.
Well, it's changed dramatically from what I see here and what I started off with. And even when I ended, I raced from 1950 to 59 and then continued on as owner till 76. And we were pretty, I thought, revolutionary in 76. And I look today and my God, we were antiques compared to today, with all the turbine jet engines and modern airfoil designs and movable canards for aerodynamics, and just astronomical. The turning ability and the accelerating speeds probably have made the boats go as fast as they are. The record now for a 2.5 mile lap average is 169.9, done by the Miss Budweiser in Detroit, Michigan. Well, just getting here a couple hours ago, I took a quick walk through, and of course, the love of wooden boats, number one. I think that's fantastic. I was raised in that era. Happened to have, my first boat was the old Notre Dame, which was a mahogany planked boat with a Allison engine that would do about 110 miles an hour. And I always loved wooden boats, and I'm so pleased to see that the people of this area and others have taken time, money, and effort to preserve these boats. I think a lot of the children that come up here have seen nothing but a plastic world of boats and see what a boat really is like.
It was 26 years ago that driver Buddy Byers was badly hurt when the Chrysler Queen crashed during a race. Well, this morning, his adrenaline was pumping hard. His wife checking out his protective gear. Buddy is about to power up the Chrysler Queen for a test drive. It's the first time he's been behind her wheel in 26 years.
It's kind of like coming back in my second childhood. And I think it's more fun the second time around. Really, it's a little rough out there when I was out there now. I couldn't get about 3,200 RPM, which is probably 70 or 80 miles an hour. But I think later in the day, we're going to try, when it smooths down a little bit later, like 6:30, we'll go out and try again. I'd like to show them about 100 mile an hour lap. Well, we're proud of it. It's the boys that restored it. You know, I feel it's stronger and better than it was almost 30 years ago. The boat will be 30 years old next year. It was riding in Indiana for 5 or 6 years, and it was riding in Columbus for 7 or 8 years. So when I told the guys they could work on it, I never thought that it would come back like it is. They showed it to me about 6 months ago, and I said, oh my golly, it's beautiful. We got to run it again. And that's the reason we're here. But I think, you know, with Clayton doing this, there's a lot of older race people that get out of racing, and then they drop out of American Powerboat. And I think this is one of the events that I think we can get some of the older fellows to come back. I've talked to a lot of them next year or the year after, bring their boats. It'll keep members in our association, and it'll add for a special event. Well, I think when you break any record, you don't know it while you're doing it. When you come into the dock and everybody's clapping and yelling, you know you've done something. But when you're out there, you really have no idea, you know, the speed that you could be running. We broke several world records, and I didn't know it until Bob Cunningham, my crew chief, waved when I came in. So that means you must have done something good.
The man behind the success of Alter Ego, Bob Schroeder.
Well, you know, I've got it tamed down quite a bit from the racing days. Of course, I'm a lot older right now, too, than I was back in the racing days. So we just tamed it down so we could take somebody for a ride and go for a ride ourselves and just keep our hand in it. Oh, I think racing has changed a lot because it got so technical. It's still, right now, it is, the technical end of it is, it's way beyond me. I'm strictly a wrenchman, you know, and when it gets to this computer stuff, I'm lost. So because of all the technology that's been put into it and the new Kevlars and all kinds of new materials they build them out of.
Boating stories proliferated this event. Stories which ranged from the thrills of winning the Gold Cup to changes in the starting clock.
That was everybody's hot ambition to win the Gold Cup, you know. And
what was it like for you?
Well, it was the ultimate. All I can say. And of course, everybody out there was so nice. Kind of felt like you.
Would Craig Lawson report to the
star or something? I don't know what.
Please, thank you.
Everybody knew you. And
some of the problems they have nowadays remind me of sitting on the council of the American Powerboat Association many years ago when speeds were going from the 60s up to the hundreds. And rules changes had to be made. One of them was the design of the starting clock. And we had all kinds of problems with that because a lot of the old timers said what was good enough for us is good enough for them. And it was Horace Dodge who broke the stalemate with a proposal that eventually wound up with the clock that was changed that changed color from white to black, or black to white, and made starting much easier.
Oh, it was a lot of great chatter that went on, from the real pioneers of boat racing. My heroes, Bob Bogie, a man that raced against my father. I was born and raised in powerboat racing, right from the Detroit area. So as kids, we'd take our bicycles down to the river and we'd hear the big thunderboats out there practicing. And so it got infectious and it just stayed with me forever. Every era has its own romance, and I think it is very romantic to hear the tales that they have of, when they used to race at Picton, Ontario up in Canada, and they'd run in through the Finger Lake areas here in New York, and the history of the Gold Cup from where it started and where it's at now, and the evolution of the boats from the time that they only went 17 or 18 miles an hour to they're doing 200 in the straightaway now. So it's just a fantastic sport. It's a good family sport. A beautiful sunshiny day like today and a great outing for the family. What more could you ask for?
I was sitting on the dock over many of those years, 1940s and 50s, watched a lot of these fellows race boats, and I started racing inboard hydroplanes in the 40s. I raced 266 hydros in 1949 against Bill Muncie and Paul Sawyer. At the Nationals, I flipped over, so my dad said, well, we'll sell the boat. So we sold it to Ronnie Musson, got him started in boat racing, and I started racing outboards. So I kind of did the reverse. I went from inboards to outboards. And I won the Albany, New York race several times, and won the first stock outboard nationals in 1949. I went on to race outboard pleasure craft in the 50s and 60s, and offshore races to Miami, Nassau in the 60s. And I'm still involved. I'm the chief inspector for offshore powerboat racing for the last 12 years.
One of racing's pioneers was on hand to tell his story. A story of thrills and of excitement and of disappointment. The legendary Bill Tenney talks about racing in Monaco. For him, just getting there was no easy task.
That was a great thrill and a very interesting experience. I had a great deal of trouble getting over there because the shipping line first wouldn't take my boat at the last minute, so I had to send the boat over by air. And then the fuel was a problem because you couldn't ship the fuel in any manner except on a tramp steamer. But by the time I had decided to go, the applicable tramp steamer had left a month before. But I was fortunate and got in touch with the mobile oil people, and they had their people come from Marseille and meet me with fuel and so on and so forth. The logistics were something. We also had problems when we got to Genoa, unloaded there, and the customs people wanted to put this thing in bond, and it would take several days to get it out. We had to race the next day at Monte Carlo. But again, the mobile people came to our rescue, and they could speak the language, and they talked their way out, and they went with us to the border at Menton, where we went from Italy to Monte Carlo and talked to the customs people there, and so forth.
What was that race actually like for you?
Well, as you may know, it was something of a disappointment. I came all that distance over there, and it was time for the Class C Hydro race for the Ward Trophy. When we came over there, the thing wouldn't start. We cranked and cranked, and what happened, we kept having one cylinder fall out, and then the other one, and ordinary, just changed the plugs. Well, we found out that on the way over, the spark plugs had become contaminated with salt air, and half of them were shorted out. However, they had a race for Class X. These were unlimited class boats, and there were some there with 6 cylinders, superchargers, 2 propellers. And we found out what went on with the motor then, and the course had fairly short straightaways, and I knew I could accelerate faster than these Class X boats. So I went out on the X race, and I was going to be a hero. We came down the first turn, and there was 2 of these great, huge things jumping up and down. It was very rough, and I was in the middle. So I throttled back before I got squashed. The next time I came around, and the comms out of the course, I gave it the gun. I went up in a second place. Oh boy, here I go. And I got on the rough side of the course, boom, upside down.
Oh, this is like reliving racing in the 50s and the 60s. And in fact, I started in the 40s. And then I quit in the early 1970s and because I was really tired of it at that time. There are superstars of the 40s when I would read about them, and Bill Tenney's over there, and here he is today, and I met him for the first time, and it's just, he was kind of a hero to him. He never knew it, but I got a scrapbook full of his newspaper clippings and stuff like that. It's just, and then here he is today. Can't believe it. He came to Clayton.
I started in 1931, and I retired in 1971, 40 years minus a few days. Racing against my friends was probably the most enjoyable thing, but I was very fortunate. I had 9 national championships. I had 3 world's records. And boating has been very good to me. And while it sent me to the hospital a few times, and I'm a little crippled, I don't begrudge the fun I had as a kid and then as a man in outboard racing. Bill Tenney, a great competitor in Class C. We always had a boat-to-boat argument, you know. But when we're off the course, I couldn't buy him enough drinks, he couldn't buy me enough.
That was back about 40 years ago or longer that we used to race these boats, and we had a lot of fun back then, and it's been a lot of fun getting ready for this.
For many of these boating legends, living on the edge, breaking new ground in record speed, all added up to a life of excitement. To get a small sense of how it feels, we took our cameras on board Dancin' Bear to talk with driver Kurt Breyer.
We were leaving the pits there to come out on the race course, and it's not a full-size race course like we used to race on, but it's approximate, and it's nice setup for us to test these old boats. And of course, coming out of the pit, you have to exercise caution and whatnot, and do the same procedure we used to when we were racing. You turn right and follow down the course, and then we took a nice trip around the course. Fortunately, the water isn't too bad right now, and actually the weatherman's been pretty good to us. It's a nice day here in Clayton for this sort of thing. This boat, Dancing Bear, is an F-service runabout, and I designed it and built it myself, and was High Point winner every year that I raced it from 66 through 72, and I did the mechanicking and whatnot, and held the straightaway record at 94.6 and competition record at 77.7, and it's been a real success story from that. And then about 3 years, I sold the boat when the APBA dropped the class, and I found the boat about 3 years ago rotting away, and restored it, and it's almost exactly the way we used to race it. It's got the 1958 Chrysler Tenney, and it's got the 6.2 barrel 97 carburetors on it, and it's detuned just a little bit so that we don't have to buy absolute racing fuel, and it's got a transmission, and as you can see, we've rigged the front seat here so we can take people for rides. We take the front seat out, there's a hatch that goes in, it looks exactly the way we raced it.
This event was considered so exciting and successful, plans are already underway for another. John Clark considers the just concluded regatta only the beginning.
I think the fact that this is the first time in a lot of years, it's the first time that this broad a range of race boats has ever been brought together.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. That antique race boats of all, there's been Gold Cup regattas, you know, we had those, 10 boats would be there, 8 boats would be there. We went to Detroit, we went to Lake George, here, but never anything of this magnitude that encompass, the full range of the classes of race boats or the numbers. And I think the important thing is that we're all here together, we're going to get to know one another better. One important thing is now there is a list that has addresses and phone numbers and what boat. So next year or in the years to come, when we want to get this thing together here or at another place, we've got a list to work from. And we'll know one another better. We'll share what we're doing with the public and with the people that have always had boats but are interested in race boats now, and they're going to have more access, and I think that's maybe one of the most important things.
And while the boats and drivers are gone for now, they will return. Return for what many say will be an even bigger and better show at Clayton's Antique Boat Museum.
Oh, this is great fun. I sure hope we have more of them, and I'll be back. I hope I'll bring a boat next time. Find one of my old racing boats and restore it and come back again.